What's up, everybody, and welcome to One Man's Opinion. And today we've got a smackdown, God versus God, deity versus deity, a clash of the titans, a real heavenly throwdown, because today we are looking at Smite, a 2014 video game by Hi-Rez Studios that is still going strong today. Smite's been around for a little while, but I've never played it before, and here recently in the last month I kind of picked it up, and I thought, because it's free, you can get it for free on Xbox Live, so I was like, you know what, a free video game, it's one I've heard a lot about, especially in the past. I had heard a lot about it years ago, not so much recently, so I downloaded it and I started playing, and I was like, you know what? This game's a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed it a lot, but I wish that there would have been some sort of guide to tell me about the characters a little bit more. I didn't do any research, to be honest. There might be something like that out there. But I decided, you know what? Now that I've got a little bit better hang of the game, maybe I could put together a list of the 12 starting gods in order from best to worst. Now, number one, this is not my favorite to my least favorite. My favorite of these 12s is not number one, which tells me that my system for rating them was pretty unbiased, because he barely edged out the top 5. He's up there. My favorite is up there, but not all my favorites hit really high. This is more about who's the best well-rounded character. Who's the easiest to play? So if I was brand new to the game, who would I want to pick up and use? And that depends on a variety of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you know how I rated them, what they scored, and then you can decide, even if it's not the number one guy, maybe you're not looking for someone who plays like who I rated as number one, you could still hear based on the things that I say about these characters and be like, you know what, that sounds more like the kind of character I want to play with. So it's informative, but also my goal is to tell you who I think is the most well-rounded character. I would say that that's probably how this rating is going to go, how this ranking system is going to go. So there are 12 gods that you can start with in Smite if you don't buy anything and you just go in cold turkey. 12 starting gods, and we're going to rank them coming at you right now. Coming in at number 12, the worst of the worst, Ra, the Egyptian sun god. Now look, to be honest, Ra was one of the first characters I played, and when I played him, I was like, hey man, I'm having a lot of fun with this guy. But honestly, after I played the game some more and found out how good the other characters are, Ra really didn't quite make it. So just so you know, before I really break it down, there are 6 categories that I'm grading each character on. Number 1 is damage or offensive capabilities. Number 2 is defense. That's just simply how much punishment can they take. Number 3 is survivability. That's different than defense. Defense is how much punishment can they take. Survivability is, can they escape? And a perfect example of that would be Kronos. Now, he's not one of the 12 starting gods, so I'm going to use him as an example. Defensively, he sucks. If somebody gets on his head, hits him a lot, his health bar is going to diminish. Kronos has speed bursts to get himself away from combat. He's got a move that stuns the enemy. He's also got his ultimate that reverses time and basically takes him a few seconds back in time to where he was with all his health back, with all his mana back, or whatever he had at that time. Killing Kronos is very difficult. His defense sucks, but actually killing him is very difficult. He can escape combat, go back, heal up, and then get back in the fight. And that's kind of what we're looking at, the survivability, that category. The 4th rank is nuisance. So where do they fall as just, they're not a character who necessarily gets the most kills, but they're a character that just is an aggravation for one reason or another. Maybe they stun a lot or freeze a lot or, traps, whatever it is. The 5th category is ease of use. So how easy is it to just pick him up and play with him? Pick her up, whoever it is, whoever the god is. How easy is it to just play with that character? And then finally, number 6, versatility. How versatile is that character? Can they do a little bit of everything? Can they get you from a range? Can they hurt you from up close? Can they survive? How versatile are they top to bottom? Those are the 6 categories, and Ra, as I said, didn't score well on any of them. Now, offensively, you could argue that Ra has some high damage, and that's true, but Ra basically only has 2 attacks that really do damage. One's like a sky laser, but it's slow moving, and it's so narrow of a beam that it's really easy for the opponent to dodge. Other than that, he has a heal, so that's not an attack. His basic attack is pretty slow. His third ability is something that surrounds him. It's not really for damage. It's more to annoy the other characters and get them away from him. It slows them down a little bit. I'm pretty sure it kind of blinds them for a second too. And so it helps him get away, but it's not really for damage. His ultimate can do a lot of damage, but again, it suffers from the same problem as his little sky beam attack. It's kind of easy to dodge, and it's kind of slow moving, and it's a narrow thing. So offensively, though he can dish out a lot of damage, his ability to actually hit can sometimes be difficult. And so he didn't score very high. By the way, I'm scoring these 1 out of 10. And so I put him just above average for offensive capabilities, just a little bit above a 5. As far as defense goes, he's a caster. His defense is pretty low. Now, I don't think he has the lowest defense of some of the casters on this game, but it is pretty low. His survivability isn't very good either. I know I said he had that move that slows down enemies, but you'll come to find that most enemies in this game have some sort of lunge or speed boost, or something that even like a teleport that allows them to cover a great distance quickly. So even if you hit him with that brief stun, Ra doesn't have anything that speeds him up and that jettisons him across the battlefield. And so you hit them with that thing and it slows them for a bit, but if they've got a move ready to where they can jump forward quickly, there's nothing you can do. And with poor defense, he's not going to survive very long once they get back on top of him. As far as being a nuisance, he doesn't get many points for that either. He doesn't really have any stuns. He has the one move that slows and blinds. And then other than that, he's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. He can drop a heal, which can be a little aggravating, I suppose. But really, the heal doesn't help all that much. It's an area that players can get in, but if they spend too much time there, you can just spam the zone with attacks. You're going to do more damage than it heals for, so it's not worth it to stand in the zone and take damage. And so in the long run, as far as ease of use goes, he doesn't even score that high on ease of use because, again, his best attacks, his most damaging attacks, aren't easy to hit with. He's not the hardest guy to use or anything like that. Like I said, he was one of the first guys I picked up, and I enjoyed him. But when you really start playing with the other characters, you're going to see, like, there's other characters that are just easier to use for somebody who's just showing up to the game. And versatility, again, he's terrible. He's not versatile at all. He's a ranged character, purely range. He can do nothing up close. He has a very difficult time defending himself when somebody gets on top of him and pressures him. Having said all that, Ra had the lowest score. 1 out of 10 in 6 categories gives you a potential for 60 points. Ra scored 23. Which you're going to see a lot of these are very, very close, but Ra is far and away the bottom guy here. Coming in at number 11, we have Artemis, another kind of ranged caster, and you'll see the way I set this up to be like the most versatile, it does give an advantage sort of to the warrior types, but even if these are your favorite characters, just try to keep in mind that I'm not saying that they're bad characters at all necessarily. I'm saying that for a new person coming into the game, it might not be the best pick because they're not super versatile. And Artemis kind of falls in that same category. Now, offensively, Artemis can deal out some damage because she has her traps that she lays down. She can drop arrows from the sky. She's shooting her bow all the time. By the way, I don't think I said it. Artemis is goddess of the hunt, Greek goddess of the hunt, in case you wanted to know. Artemis can dish out the damage. Another move she has is she turns her bow sideways and it kind of starts to glow, and she gets to shoot her arrows for a short amount of time while she's in that stance. The problem with Artemis is it's not always the easiest to hit with her. Yes, she can dish out damage, but that's only if you can manage to hit. Her traps are small. They're very, very small on the battlefield, and you lay them out, but you might not be around when somebody gets trapped in one. So you really got to hang back. You got to learn to hang back with Artemis to deal out that kind of damage. Now, once they're trapped, you can really punish them. And she's got a good ultimate, but her ultimate requires you to be decently close to people. And I think that's the biggest flaw with Artemis. Her bow and arrow isn't super accurate. And so even when they do get trapped, or when you have that other stance where you're getting more damage, to really be effective and make sure you're hitting your shots, a lot of the time you need to close the gap a little bit. It's easier to hit those shots. And that's where Artemis falls short. Her offensive game isn't, I don't think, as good as it could be, because I think her range should be better, or it should be easier to hit with her bow. And you've got to kind of get almost to a mid-range level to really be effective with her, and that's bad because her defense is so bad. Her offense suffers because her defense is horrendous. If someone gets on top of you as Artemis, you've got very few options to get out of there. There's really no options because your defense is horrible, and that's why she gets so bad a score as survivability as well. She doesn't have a lunge. She doesn't have a speed burst, no teleport. Your best bet is to hope you have a trap available and see if you can like turn and shoot one at the ground, and maybe you'll ensnare them a little bit. You know, that's your best bet for trying to get away from somebody. You know, a character like Artemis, who needs to be at a range to fight, needs an exit strategy, and she doesn't have a very good one. Now, you could say you could hold on to your ultimate until that moment comes that you get pressure, and then hit your ultimate. The ultimate does stun people, and so she does have a few options, but it sucks to use your ultimate. For me, anyway, I hate using my ultimate as a runaway technique instead of using it to get kills. And Artemis, who I feel like is designed to be more of an offensive player, it's a shame to have to hold on to her ultimate attack for retreat purposes. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword there. As far as being a nuisance, she does score pretty good. I mean, she can drop those arrows out of the sky anywhere, and that does quite a bit of damage. If she ever does get on you with the bow, she can take down health bars quick. And she's got the traps that are just super annoying. She's got her ultimate, which is the hog that comes out and hits them, and it stuns the other player. And so, yeah, she scores really well in the nuisance category and in the ease of use category. There's really not much you can complain about. As far as using her goes, she's super easy. She gets a big circle for one of her attacks. You just drop that on somebody. Her ultimate, you get within range, and the hog goes and gets them, and then they're stunned, and you just eat them up. You set these traps out. You don't have to like wait on anything, because the traps are going to stay whether you live or die. The traps hang out, so you just drop traps everywhere throughout the game, and eventually people are going to start getting caught. And even if you're not there to do the killing, somebody else may come along and get them. So she scores high in the nuisance category. As far as versatility goes, Artemis is around the middle territory. I give her a 4 out of 10 because she can dish out enough damage close with her bow, especially in that stance, that even people who like to close the gap, if they don't have a health lead, have to be careful, because she can hurt people quick. But by and large, she's best at a distance, keeping her distance, keeping her shots up. But she does have some options for up close, so I didn't give her as bad as Ra, who got like a 1 in versatility. I give her a 4 because she does have a few ways to make people pay from close. All in all, Artemis got a 31 out of 60, and you can see that's a big jump from Ra, and you'll see now everyone starts hitting very, very close. Up next at number 10, we have Yamoja. Yamoja is the Yoruba goddess of rivers. And so she's pretty cool. I didn't know who she was before I started. When I actually played with her, I super enjoyed playing with this character. She's another one of those that like I really enjoy playing with, but didn't score high based on the criteria I set up for this. I don't think maybe she's the best for a new player. Playing a Guardian, she's a Guardian role, you have to learn to reserve a little bit. You're not the person that's getting all the kills. You don't want to be out there just trying to kill everything. That's not really your role. Your role is to be a little bit of a tank. Your role is to be a little bit of a nuisance. You're going to get a lot of assists if you're doing the role of the Guardian correctly. As far as offensively goes, she doesn't do a lot of damage at all. Most of her attacks are not set up to really hurt a whole lot. she does have ways of getting some heavy damage in, but I would say for a newcomer, it's not easy to figure out. Even her ultimate does a lot of damage, and basically she kind of does like a parting of the Red Sea. She brings water up on either side, and it's this long stretch, and it holds for just a second and then comes crashing down in on whoever's in there. The problem is it holds for a really long time, and basically anybody who is paying attention has plenty of time to get out of it. There are ways to mitigate that. There are ways to change it up, but for a new player, you're not going to figure that out right off the bat. Some of her other moves is like she puts up a little spiral circle of water, which acts as like a barrier. So if someone's trying to run away from you, you can throw that up in front of them and kind of block them, or you can even throw it up to keep someone from getting to you. But that's difficult to do. It doesn't take up very much space at all. So you got to be really precise with that. Defensively, though, she scores really well, especially for a caster. I gave Yamoja an 8 out of 10, which is far and away the best defense that a caster has. Somebody gets on top of Yamoja, she can really take a beating, and which is good because she's not very fast and she doesn't have great options for escape. But that high defense helps her survivability. I gave her kind of a mid-range survivability. She's at her best when she just keeps her distance and just spams. She has attacks that are easy to hit with. They just don't do very much damage. You can play the keep away game really well and stay back and be a pest and protect your team with Yamoja, and for that I gave her a 5 survivability, but she is super slow and doesn't have great exit strategies. So even though she has a high defense that can keep her alive for a little bit, if somebody hits you with like a really good ultimate, or if they've got a lot of their super moves saved up and they just kind of, rattle them off at you and you get caught up in something like that, you can go down pretty quick. And so I gave her a middling on survival for basically mostly for her high defense and her style of play that kind of keeps her out of combat a little bit. As far as being a nuisance, I gave her a really high score, 8 out of 10, because she is very difficult to kill, and the fact that her defense is so high, and the fact that she stays out of combat and just kind of lobs these water-based attacks from afar that don't do a lot of damage, but they just pester. And her ability to throw up that little wall, if you get good at it, you can really block somebody's exit or entrance into the fray. And so she can do a lot of little things to really control the battlefield. She's never going to be the one that gets like a whole lot of kills, but she can really control the battlefield. And for that, yeah, she's high on the nuisance score. Yeah, you can really aggravate people with her a whole lot. Ease of use, I put at a 6 out of 10 because I think on face, she's really easy to use, but to actually be really good with her, to learn to control the water wall. And what the technique I learned to use with her is when I throw up her ultimate, which is the water walls, people escape really easy. I always make sure I have that water barricade ready to go. And so I throw up the walls and then I drop that water barricade at the end of it because people instinctually try to back out of it, and they're keeping their eyes on the field to play kind of offense and defense as they try to make their escape, because there's plenty of time. There's no reason to rush. The walls stay up for a while. But what happens is they back into that barrier and they can't figure out why they can't get out. And then the walls come crashing down, and that's how you can really get some good damage with Yamoja. But I don't think it's a technique that you learn the first time through. So her ease of use at a high level, it takes some getting used to. You really have to learn to kind of keep yourself out of the fray, to play that controller role. You don't want to just go in and try to take people on. You're not going to do much good as Yamoja that way. You want to stay out of it. You want to pester, and you want to learn to really make your ultimate count. I did not give her a high versatility, though. Basically, she doesn't really have any options up close. Now, you can drop some of her spells more on top of her, but because she doesn't do much damage, you're not going to be much of a deterrent to keep people away from you. So she doesn't really have any options up close. She's much better staying at a distance. Yamoja at number 10 got a 32 out of 60, so only beat Artemis by 1. All right, coming in at number 9, we have Nemesis. Now, this is one that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that is so low on the list, because Nemesis can do a lot of damage. But remember, this isn't just about damage. This is about versatility. This is about ease of use. It's about, that new player that comes in to use Nemesis the first time. And honestly, Nemesis's damage is good if you hit her moves in succession the right way. She can dish out damage. I think you've got to be really well-rounded with her. I think that it's a character that you really have to play with quite a bit before you get a good grasp on how to really handle her. She does good damage. I gave her a 7, but a lot of her attacks don't really do a whole lot of damage. A lot of her stuff is more about debuffing and buffing. And she can kind of buff herself a lot to build up to a lot of damage. Even her ultimate is sort of that way. You kind of just drop something onto somebody and highlight them. If I'm remembering correctly, they get debuffed and you get buffed off of it, but it doesn't do like a whole lot of damage. And then one of her abilities is a dash, and it's more for escape. You can dash into somebody with it or use it as a chase down, but it by itself doesn't do a whole lot of damage. You really have to rely on your other 2 attacks for that sort of thing. It's good. Her best attack for doing damage, I think it's her A on Xbox. It's double swords. It's like a broad sweep with her swords. It does quite a bit of damage. And her basic attack does quite a bit of damage too. It's just a bit of a learning curve for her damage. And for being an up-close fighter, her defense is so-so. It's middle of the road. I gave her a 5 on defense. She can take damage pretty quick. She really relies on that dash move to get out of combat when she's in trouble. You really have to just keep that to yourself because she is an up-close fighter who has bad defense. To me, it's not good enough. I think her defense needs to be buffed because you get in there and you're trying to do damage and then, some of these ranged guys drop some spells on you, and before long you're dashing out of there. You got to kill them quick with Nemesis, which is why, for as far as survivability goes, though her defense isn't very good, that dash is it's really good for getting you out of danger. It's not perfect because her defense isn't great. If you're a long way from the base, sometimes people can eventually catch back up with you. Or if you happen to have used it, you really don't have any options. And then if somebody really gets on your head or you get double teamed or something like that because of the bad defense, her health bar will diminish pretty quickly. So I gave her a 7 on survivability. I know some people are going to think that it should have been higher. She is good at getting out with that dash. There's just circumstances where the dash isn't enough or you get too much on you at once, and I don't think it's enough options to give her like a 9 or a 10. She doesn't get a very high score for being a nuisance either. Most of her stuff is pretty straightforward. She's coming at you. She's going to hit you with her sword. She's going to try to do her damage. As far as being a nuisance, aside from the fact that when she does get on you, kind of like Artemis, when she does get on you, she can do a lot of damage quickly if the player knows what they're doing. In that regard, I guess a minor nuisance, but that's just really part of the game. It's not really specific to any of her abilities that make her a nuisance. Her ease of use, I give her a high ease of use. And somebody might look at this and say, well, if you're not doing that good with Nemesis, how can you give her an ease of use because she's a really good character? But you got to keep in mind that this isn't for experienced players. If you're watching this and you're a super experienced player and you're like, no, Nemesis is really good, if you're not using her well, then obviously her ease of use shouldn't be really high. Then what I'm telling you is as a new player who can just pick her up and run with her, I think she is pretty easy to use because all of her moves are very straightforward. Everything that she does is very straightforward. Like, this is what it does. Go do it. Now, the nuance of figuring out how to use those to the best of her ability might be a little bit more difficult. But as far as just picking her up and trying to use her and trying to get kills and stuff here and there, I don't think she's that difficult to use. She's pretty straightforward. Save your dash. You got your big A button that does a lot of damage. Drop your ultimate on somebody, hunt them down. I don't use the dash unless I know I can kill somebody. If I know I can get that kill, I can drop that ultimate on them, dash in, slice them up, get out. If I can do that sort of thing, then the dash can be used as an offensive weapon. It's not super difficult to figure out. I gave her an 8 out of 10 on ease of use. And as far as versatility goes, I gave her a 4. She's pretty straightforward. She doesn't really have any options for ranged except for her ultimate, which you can drop that on people from quite a ways away. And her dash does give her a little bit of ability to close the gap on some casters and that sort of thing. But the fact that you have to really save that as an exit strategy because her defense is so bad is why I didn't give her a higher score on versatility. I gave her a middle of the road score, and Nemesis came out with a 33 out of 60. So right there, you know, right among the pack. All right, we've got 2 more to go for this video. I don't know if I said that at the beginning of the video. Only doing 6 out of the 12 because it just would, I'd be here an hour. Number 8 coming in. I think this is going to surprise a lot of people. It surprised me. Cocokhan, one of the best offensive starters, and he's super easy to use. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that he didn't score much higher. I was surprised. I was like, I reran the numbers because I was like, why is he so low? I'll try to explain a little bit. Number 1, as far as damage goes, he scores really high. But it's not as high as you would think, okay? It's not a 10. He's not a 9 or a 10. I gave him an 8. But the 8 is basically for one reason. He has that drop down tornado thing and he can create a lot of damage in a hurry and it refills quickly. His blast that he spits out of his mouth is pretty good, but not always easy to hit with, and I think his ultimate suffers the same thing. Yeah, it can dish out a lot of damage, but it kind of like Raw, it has that straight line and it kind of takes a while to sweep across, and so people have an opportunity to move. Now, unlike Raw, it's kind of a wider beam that comes across there, and so people can't get out of the way quite as easily as they can with Raw. Still, there are options to dodge most everything he does, but that tornado move is dirty, and for that alone, plus the other damage that this character can easily dish out along the way, gets him an 8 out of 10. However, defensively, I only gave him a 3, which is kind of middle of the road for casters, but really somebody gets on his head and hits him a whole lot, he's going down. And then remember, that's just base defense. I know he has exit plans, but that goes into survivability. Defensively, he can't really take much punishment. For survivability, I gave him a 6. Now, I know a lot of you probably think that that's a little bit low, but really he only has the one option. He's got the speed boost, the little dash thing. Frankly, it lasts a decent amount of time, and it's a pretty decent speed boost. But so many other people have chase down options in this game that speed boost isn't always enough. It's just not always enough to get you back to heal up. And with all the other chase down options and the damage that people can dish out and his defense being so low, I don't think that he is as great at surviving as maybe it appears at times. Now, if you're really skilled with Cocokhan and you can keep yourself out of the fray and you can just drop that stuff in and, you know, keep it back and stuff like that, yeah, he can survive pretty well that way. But as far as like when the crap hits the fan goes, a lot of people can catch him. As good as that speed burst is from time to time at getting you out of trouble, because his defense is so bad, I've had times where I didn't have time to press the A button. You know, I couldn't get the speed boost going. And even if you do, there's a few seconds before you really put any meaningful distance between you and another player. So it's not a get out of jail free card by any means. And I don't think it's as good as like Nemesis's dash, for example, because you get that double dash with her and it's faster. It's and you're across the field. Whereas Cocokhan, it has a little bit of a startup and then you kind of start speeding up and getting out of there. But there's a delay there, and his defense is worse, and so I couldn't give him a super high survivability. As far as being a nuisance goes, he's really only got the tornadoes. That is aggravating on its own. But it wasn't enough to give him a very high score in the nuisance category either, because he doesn't really do any traps. He doesn't really do any stuns or anything like that. He's got those tornadoes that will land on you and kind of buzz around and follow you, but not enough to score high at all on that one. Ease of use, though, he gets a 10 because I think he does so much damage, but it's not even difficult to do, because that tornado thing, it's just drop it, Drop it on them. And everyone in the area is not only getting hurt, but after they leave it, it's on them. And damage is just ticking away. The blast is easy to use. The ultimate is easy to use. It's all so straightforward. And I think that's why we think on face Cocokhan's so good, because he gets damage so easy. And also, it's super easy to do. But versatility is another one of those scores that he suffers in, because really he's got no options up close. The only thing he can do when people get close is run. You can drop the tornadoes on him if you still have it, but most of the time you're going to be keeping your distance and spamming spells, and then if somebody gets on you, you might not have those options. A lot of times it's retreat time, if somebody gets on top of you. It's not like he scored bad. Cocokhan came in and he got a 33, same as Nemesis, when all was said and done. And then it came down to really who I preferred playing with if there was a tie. And I prefer playing with Cocokhan. I like his skill set better. I like his moves list better, which is funny because most of the people I like the most are the up close players. He gets the edge over her and gets our number 8 spot. All right, finally coming in at number 7 and rounding out, I guess you'd say the bad half, but the scores are so close you can't even really call. And I think before I reveal the number 7, let me just say the balance of this game is really, really good. And I think even with this goofy little thing I've thrown together here, it shows how good the balance is, because a lot of these guys are within one number of each other, or they tied and I just had to take who I liked better. But coming in at number 7 is Ymir. Now this is another character that can be super, super good in the right hands. I've played against Ymirs that have made me just furious, because people who are good with Ymir can make life a nightmare. He doesn't have the best damage, but honestly, for a tank that he can get off some pretty decent damage. I put him middle of the road with damage. His defense is as high as anybody. Nobody on the list scored higher defensively than Ymir, based on who I've played with. Only one other person tied with him. He got a 9 out of 10 for defense. His survivability is an 8 because his defense is stupid good. He can throw up the wall between him and enemies. He just throws up this ice wall, and it's pretty wide, so like that gives him time to get away. He's got freeze breath. He can just freeze people for seconds, and that gives him time to get away. He's not a very fast character, but his skill set allows him to not only have a super high defense, but also get away. The only reason he only got an 8 for survivability is because of how slow he is. And, even, having to turn around to freeze somebody in that amount of time, because you slow down to backpedal, you slow down to turn and do the freeze. If you've got more than one person chasing you, or if they're ranged and the freeze isn't going to hit them, you've slowed yourself down, you're still taking a beating. And so he's not perfect at getting away, but he's difficult, very difficult to bring down. And a nuisance, I gave him an 8. The dude, man, in the hands of a good player, the dude's ice wall it's so annoying. If the player is good, the ice wall is super annoying. He can freeze you, and he can do pretty decent damage, and he's hard to take down. Everything about Ymir is annoying to play against. So he got an 8. Which is as high as anybody else on this list. This is where he kind of loses out. He's got really good scores. Granted, his damage isn't very high, but his ease of use is low. I give him a 3 out of 10. And that's because I've seen how good Ymir can be. I've played against people that were really good with him, and I've played with him several times, and I'm still not that good with him. Using the wall is an art. Using the wall correctly, his ice wall is such an art. Using his freeze in tandem with his ultimate, which is like an area around him, is really an art. He doesn't do crazy damage, but he can have moments of high damage output if you stack his abilities in the right order. If you can stop people with the ice wall, hit them with your A attack, which is like this ice shard thing that comes out, and then maybe freeze them and hit them with your ultimate, yeah, you can really start ramping up the damage even with a guy like Ymir. But the timing, the placement, every little thing matters with Ymir. Those who are good with him can make your life miserable. But those who aren't practiced with him are laughable, because the ice wall doesn't do anything if you don't place it well. The freeze breath, if you're missing with it, if you're letting people slip out of that range as you cast it, that's nothing. Your A attack does decent damage, but it's just decent damage, and then you're pretty much out of options. Got very short range for his basic attack. He's very, very slow, and so if you can't utilize his moves appropriately, you've got nothing going for you with Ymir. So his ease of use is very low, as is his versatility. Everything Ymir does is very, very close, aside from the wall, but that doesn't really do any damage. You've got to be in tight with Ymir all the time. It's not versatile at all. He's a train. He's a wrecking ball. He's moving forward. He's in the fight all the time. He's trying to be a nuisance. He's a guardian. So he's pestering people as much as he can while he lets his team get the kills and get the glory. He's tanking. He's taking a lot of damage, but it's not a versatile style of playing. And so he gets low scores on ease of use and versatility, and mid to low score on damage. And that's why Ymir came in at a 34 out of 60. Okay, that is the first 6 in my ranking of the starting 12 Smite gods. And so far we've got Ra, Artemis, Yamoja, like an emoji? No, Yamoja, and I may be mispronouncing some of these, Cocokhan, and Ymir. Up next, we'll have our other 6, the gods that are left: Ares, Bellona, Guan Yu, Oleron, Neith, Thor. Those are the remaining 6 coming at you next time. Hey, I hope you enjoyed this. And, if you play the game and, some of your favorite characters here haven't scored very high on this list, just remember it's more of a list for beginners. And so if you're like an experienced player, of course you're going to be really good with maybe Ra. Look, I played today and I got my butt kicked by a Ra who just, he had his timing down. He knew how to lay those lasers out and make them hit, He knew how to work the heal. I'm sure it took him a lot of practice to get that good, but he worked us with Ra. So it can happen. We won the game in the end, but he was getting a lot of kills. He was doing his job. Just because he's the lowest guy on this list doesn't mean he's the worst character, and it doesn't mean he's my least favorite either. I'm just trying to be unbiased, and I'm trying to give some people something to think about. This is a list to me about who should you play if you're brand new to the game, because they're very versatile and they're very good all-around players. Who's the best all-around? But then also giving information on who does really high damage, who has really high defense, who is a nuisance, those sort of things, so that if you just like that play style, you can be like, okay, he's not ranked very high overall, but he does do high damage, so maybe I want to play him so I can get a bunch of kills. So it's informative in more than one way. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about the video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. This has been One Man's Opinion. Thanks.